Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we're going to completely demystify the mechanics behind one of Earth's absolute most terrifying yet kind of awe-inspiring forces, the tropical cyclone. You know, these incredibly massive weather systems are just as scientifically fascinating as they are physically devastating, and we're going to break down exactly how the whole shebang works. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We've got Section 1, the global storm. Section 2, nature's destructive recipe. Section 3, inside the cyclone. Section 4, the impact of Freddy. And we'll wrap up with Section 5, surviving the storm. Let's get to it.
All right. Section 1, the global storm, where monsters are born. To really understand what we're up against, we first need to look at exactly where on the planet these atmospheric giants actually happen. So check out the specific oceanic bands highlighted here. You'll notice these storms don't just pop up anywhere. They're heavily concentrated right around the equator, specifically between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And why is that? Well, it's because these regions have sea surface temperatures sitting comfortably above 27 degrees Celsius. That warm water, it is literally the absolute baseline birthplace for these immense systems. Now, before we go any further, let's clear up a super common point of confusion. You hear all these different terms in the news, right? But whether you call it a hurricane in the Atlantic, a cyclone in the Indian Ocean, or a typhoon over in the Western Pacific, it is the exact same severe weather beast. No matter what local name it goes by, the underlying science and the sheer destructive potential are completely identical. Moving on to Section 2, nature's destructive recipe, the necessary ingredients. So, how do they actually form? It's kind of fascinating. We can look at storm formation almost like a dark geological cooking recipe. Without some highly specific physical ingredients, the storm just cannot mix itself into existence. First off, as we just saw, that ocean surface needs to be at least 27 degrees Celsius to provide energy through massive evaporation. But actually, it can't just be a shallow puddle. That warm water has to be at least 60 meters deep. Next up, you need a mixing bowl. This happens between latitudes 5 and 30 degrees north and south. Why specifically there? Because the recipe absolutely requires the Coriolis force, which is the literal rotation of the Earth, to make that rapidly rising warm air start to spin. If you're too close to the equator, there's just not enough planetary spin to get the whole thing going. Let's dive into Section 3, inside the cyclone, anatomy of a storm. We're going to see how this builds from just a regular cluster of thunderstorms into a massive, highly organized spinning machine. This cross-section is just fascinating. As that ocean-heated air rises up, it cools, condenses, and releases a ton of stored energy called latent heat. This basically makes the air rise even faster, intensely dropping the pressure down at the surface. And because of that extreme low pressure, even more air gets violently sucked into the center. It basically turns into this huge, self-sustaining engine. You can see the spiral rain bands wrapping inward toward the center, forming these massive cumulonimbus clouds, and it's all driven purely by the evaporation of moisture from the warm ocean below. But the second this system hits cold water or land, it loses its fuel source and starts to die. So the most crucial thing to understand about the anatomy of a cyclone is the sharp, honestly terrifying contrast right at its core. Dead in the center, you've got the eye. Here, air cools at high altitudes and actually sinks back down, which creates this area of eerie, temporary calm. But directly bordering that calm is the eyewall. This dense wall of clouds is where the air is rising the most intensely, and it's exactly where you are going to find the absolute strongest, most shredding winds of the entire storm.
Hey, do you like this content? Did you learn something new today? Then don't forget to make a donation so we can continue creating more content like this. In the description, you'll find a link to make your donation. Thank you.
All right, on to Section 4, the impact of Freddy, a case study in destruction. To truly grasp these mechanics and to understand why they matter so much, we have to look at what happens when a record-breaking storm slams into a vulnerable human population. Let's look at Cyclone Freddy. 9,000. That is a staggering distance. It represents the kilometers traveled by Cyclone Freddy in early 2023. Forming all the way over near Australia, it traveled westward, becoming one of only 4 tropical cyclones in recorded history to cross the entire southern Indian Ocean. And it wasn't just the sheer distance that made it historic. Storms, as you probably know, are measured on the Saffir-Simpson scale, based on wind speed. Well, Freddy didn't just casually reach a high category. It underwent what's called rapid intensification, which means the winds jumped by at least 56 kilometers per hour in a single day. And it didn't just do that once, it did it 7 different times. No way, right? It eventually peaked as a catastrophic Category 5, packing unbelievable winds over 252 kilometers per hour. Tracking this storm reveals a terrifying 34-day lifespan. That makes it one of the longest-lasting cyclones ever recorded in the Southern Hemisphere. It formed on February 6th, peaked over the open ocean on February 16th, and then just kept relentlessly churning toward land. It struck Madagascar, tracked right into the Mozambique Channel, and then made a massive, devastating second landfall in central Mozambique over a whole month after it first formed. When it finally struck Mozambique on March 12th, the reality on the ground was just heartbreaking. We're talking about a low-lying country where roughly 60% of the population lives in poverty, mostly relying on rural farming. The physical infrastructure there simply could not withstand Freddy's 172 km/h winds at landfall. But as you can see from the flattened homes and washed-out roads, the wind is really only half the battle. This storm brought an absolutely massive storm surge, pushing waves up to 5 meters high directly inland. The devastation went way, way beyond the wind. It was the sheer volume of water that caused a compounding catastrophe. Get this, the storm dumped 600 millimeters of rain in just 72 hours. To put that in perspective, that is 4 times their average monthly rainfall. During their rainy season, this catastrophic flooding destroyed 132,000 houses, ruined 390,000 hectares of agricultural land, and tragically claimed 183 lives. And the disaster didn't even stop when the winds finally died down. The flooding severely damaged water and sewage pipes, which triggered a massive public health crisis resulting in 28,600 subsequent cases of cholera. Finally, let's look at Section 5, Surviving the Storm, Adaptation and the Future. Despite all of this grim reality, there is a proactive side to this story. Believe it or not, tropical cyclones are actually the most predictable of all natural hazards, and that gives humanity a fighting chance to adapt, prepare, and survive. Because we can track their formation using advanced satellite data, coastal radars, and weather balloons, scientists can issue absolutely crucial early warnings to populations in a storm's path. But, we also have to physically adapt our built environment. Look at these colorful multi-story houses built on tall stilts. They're a perfect example of vital engineering solutions. By building structures high up off the ground, the devastating storm surges like the one we saw in Mozambique can literally just pass right underneath the living spaces. Add in things like storm shutters for the windows and curved roofs to deflect wind, and we can actively mitigate the worst property damage and, most importantly, save lives. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to face a critical question. Scientists noted that Cyclone Freddy was highly unusual. From its crazy long lifespan to the massive energy it released, and the fact that it rapidly intensified 7 times. Let's think back to our recipe. Warmer oceans hold more energy and create more evaporation. With global temperatures on the rise, ocean temperatures are following suit. So what does a warming planet actually mean for the strength, frequency, and reach of the monster storms of tomorrow? It's a huge, incredibly pressing question that our infrastructure and really our entire global community is absolutely going to have to answer.
Hey, do you like this content? Did you learn something new today? Then don't forget to make a donation so we can continue creating more content like this. In the description, you'll find a link to make your donation. Thank you.